Good morning. Today we're going to be doing the Maya exhibit here at the Cincinnati Museum Center. We'll get to see a lot of the Maya history back in the 6th century. Sounds pretty awesome. Also, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe down below. We do this all the time. Okay, so I just wanted to point out that for members, right now until November 1st, you get into the Maya exhibit for free. You can't beat that price. So even if you are a member, you do have to check in with the front desk. You do have to wear a mask the whole time you're in the museum. Now, before I go into the exhibit, I want to point out that I did a little bit of research. The actual pronunciation, even in plural, for the Yucatan Peninsula, even back in the 6th century, is pronounced Maya. People ask that question a lot. I question myself, are Maya and Mayan the same thing? They are, but they pronounce it Maya, and they prefer that everybody else pronounce it Maya too. So even in history books and everything, they've been changing it to the Maya history. I also wanted to point out that if you're unfamiliar where the Maya people are from, it was originally the Yucatan Peninsula, which is now modern-day Guatemala. From what I understand, this is going to be a Maya exhibit that dates all the way back to the 6th century. So it should be pretty interesting. Let's check it out. So we just entered the Maya exhibition here. I don't know how well the lighting's going to be in here. It's pretty dark and we're not allowed to use flash. So I'm going to do the best I can to give you guys an idea of what it's about here. Boy, this looks too cool. Entering the exhibition.
The Maya were and are extraordinarily
Starts off with a little video here.
Today,
some ancient Maya culture.
30 Maya civilizations and most intriguing mysteries.
Beautiful.
Please join us in our discovery of precious objects never before seen outside of Guatemala.
Right past the little video description in there when you first walk in, they have some of these ancient Maya artifacts. Also behind the artifacts here we have the chronology of the Mayan culture, which I'm not going to go over all of it, but it's pretty neat. It gives you each date dating back centuries ago. You do got to kind of keep moving a little bit. I'm trying to read a lot of the stuff in between filming here because there are lines that are kind of waiting to do other stuff, so can't really spend as much time as I want on them, but we're going to cover as much as I can. It's pretty amazing the things that they had to do to create their civilization. Somewhere along the lines in the mid-classic period, around seems like 15 to 1600, they had some troubles, and they're not actually 100% sure on what happened with the Maya collapse. But later, in the 1880, more civilizations started to build up around the Yucatan Peninsula, which is now modern-day Guatemala. Again, I apologize for the lighting in here. It is very dark, and they have lights lit up along the glass here, so it makes it real hard to get a good image. But this is supposed to be a handcrafted image of a jaguar. I guess jaguars were pretty common in the Yucatan Peninsula because there's a few of them here. Here's a head of a jaguar. Here's something neat from the year 550 to 800. It's basically a bowl with a macaw's head on top as a decoration. This is from the lowlands of the Maya. And what's interesting about that is that that's originally the 3 of the 32 languages that were considered Maya. 3 of them were considered Mayan. So the controversy continues. Pretty neat seeing this pottery here. Here's what they would hold liquids in, water, different juices. And this dates back to the year 250 to 550. Man. 1,500 years ago. I'm going to show you guys some of this decorative art that they have up for this exhibit. Pretty incredible. A lot of things with like horse heads on them. I don't know the significance of that, but there's a lot of this exhibit to go. I'm sure we'll find out. Some pottery here. Again, it's hard to get with the lighting here. I hope it comes out okay. This is more later. This was recorded post-classic period from the year 900 to 1524. So somewhere in between there is when this, that's a pretty big gap. All kinds of different information of certain gods that they believed in. Was this water god, Shock Shell, could cause devastating floods. They had to build reservoirs to irrigate their crops to collect the rainwater from the rainforest. And with the water god that they believed in, they knew the water flowed through subterranean caves. The Maya concluded that the underworld was a water world. Some of the water artifacts that they have here was this little frog that they built. Apparently that's from the year 550 to 800 AD. And this little turkey vulture mosaic. Now this plate here is a procession of a hunting scene. It shows a very complex scene in which many human characters painted in black interact with supernatural animals including spider monkeys, jaguars, and snakes. And this dates back from the year 600 to 900 AD. After about 5-10 minutes of being at this exhibit, I can tell they really loved birds. This is a painted tetrapod vase. Painted bird appears on the body of the vessel. On the lid is a small insect, perhaps a cicada. That does kind of look like a cicada. I gotta say, first off, this exhibit is amazing. A lot of cool stuff here. This is something I feel you really gotta see in person. It's an amazing exhibit. I believe it's here till November 1st. I know if you're a member, you get in free until November 1st. All throughout the exhibit, they have all these different questions of how did these people live 1,000, 1,500 years ago. And it's pretty neat because, you know, some of this stuff you might have to do a little research yourself. How did they tame this hostile terrain of thick roots and hanging vines, growing sophisticated cities where 100,000 people lived in comfort? Man, that's amazing. The tropical rainforest appears lush, yet its limestone soil is nutrient poor. How did the Maya produce an abundance of food? Were they blessed with great minds, generous gods, or both? City-state dynasties like Takei dominated the Maya lowlands for over 500 years. And here, right next to the interesting information they give there on how they lived in this rainforest, you come up on another pretty awesome looking video here of how this all could have happened. Too cool. Seems like this is how they were gathering their water, because the way the limestone is in Guatemala, which is modern day Yucatan, this is how they would gather their water, because the limestone would eat up a lot of the water that fell. So they had to make sure that they gathered up enough so they would be able to drink and survive. Now they're showing off some Guatemalan hot peppers. Don't think I would try one of those. Tikal was one of the great cities of the Maya. The ancient city of Tikal was built in the rainforest of northern Guatemala. At its peak in the late Classic period, it was home to as many as 100,000 people. The earliest settlement discovered here is about 2,800 years old. Wow! They have this little map here of some of the different city of Tikal.
The architects of Tikal planned the buildings in the center of the city based on lines of sight, which were usually based on right-angled triangles.
Seems like they were good at math. The way this city was designed was to continually help everybody throughout the year. Pretty interesting. They explain here master gardeners who grew the economy and how they came up with all different kinds of ways to make it work for their community and build their economy. There's an interesting little guy right here. This is a figure depicting the goddess Ixchel. Ixchel was associated with medicine, curing, and childbirth. In Maya art, she is usually portrayed as a serpent headess. Now again, the lighting might be kind of strange here, but I'll tell you what, the way they set this exhibit up is incredible. They have the way that the city would have been built as on an arc, like with the temple, with steps going all the way up the temple. Every one of them's like this. Too cool. This headdress here carries the frontal image of a god. This head portrays one of the rulers of the city of Cancun from the late classic period, a time when the city grew extremely wealthy. The headdress carries the frontal image of a god, typical in this kind of royal regalia. And I'll tell you what, to have this many artifacts from that long ago, this well preserved, man, it's just amazing. This is interesting. A grinding stone. Its unknown place of origin, but it is from the classic period, anywhere between 250 to 900. They say CE. I'm not really sure what that means, but it's 250 to 900 AD. I know that. Here's a nice video that describes what life was like for the ancient Maya and some of the artifacts that they have uncovered. Here's a throne backing that is used to depict the sun god that they believed in. These are some of the tools that they would use to make their crafts and all kinds of other things. All these date back from 600 to 900 AD. Now it appears that anything that is this big was known as the head of a ruler. So at some point or another, it seems like if you see an object of the Maya that is this big of a face sculpture, and usually on the top of the head there's some kind of depiction of either what they liked or what it was about or what they believed in. And all these are faces of kings. So apparently the Maya believed in a lot of gods. It looks as though they were into animal sacrifices or gifts of their own blood. The blood of a king was the most precious offering at all that they would give to their gods. I wanted to show off these cool spear-looking things. Man, 1,200 years ago. Here's another interesting statue. Man, I wonder how they dug this out. This is amazing. Also, one thing I want to point out right here, they say is the sculpture of a ear of a jaguar. So again, we're finding some things of a lot of similarity with the Maya population back then, was that they really liked jaguars. The jaguar has to have a lot of significance with the Maya people back then. I'm hoping as we go along here we'll find out more information. If not, I'm going to do a little research on this because that's pretty interesting about the jaguar. They seem to incorporate a little bit of jaguar stuff mixed in with a lot of their art. This is interesting. Out of all the gifts from the gods, the one thing that the Maya seemed like was the greatest gift from the gods of all was the gift of writing and math, which made their greatness possible. Okay, so this is really cool. This is a larger description of what someone created here of the actual Maya codices, which is a mapping. How do they preserve something like this? I mean, you can see where it's kind of messed up right here a little bit, but man, that is pretty awesome. Okay, so only 4 codexes remain in the world today of what the Maya was like back then. And one interesting thing is the one that we're looking at here, the one I just showed you. This is a replica, still formed in the Madrid era. It contains a lot of the astronomy part of what it was like back then. A lot of things where they would perform rituals, rain ceremonies. Too cool. A lot of it's kind of hard to get on camera because the print is so small, and like I said, it's really dark in here minus the artifacts that are lit up. So I'm doing the best I can for you. So this is interesting. This is like a stone calendar. It's a stone panel that describes events in the 7th century. I guess they had some pretty big events here along the year, because that calendar is more like maybe a month or 2 for us. This would be held up all year. Here we got an image of a king dancing. which would have been a very respectful sculptor that would have done this in appreciation for their king. An ancient sport still played today, gaming with the gods. The Mesoamerican ball game was played by the Maya and other cultures throughout Central America beginning around 1500 BCE. Each royal court had at least one team. Players tried to keep a rubber ball in the air either by striking it with girdles strapped around their hips or by hitting it with their knees and arms. While the balls varied greatly in size, they were generally very large and heavy, making the game a challenge. Sounds a lot like soccer. A version of this game is still played in parts of Mexico today. Wanted to show off this awesome entrance we're about to go into here. A bunch of all lit up artifacts. Check it out. So this is interesting. This was basically a mirror from back then. It was made out of pyrite, and this is the most elaborate one that's been preserved from what we know of the Maya lowlands. Too cool. So it seems like a lot of these artifacts that they build here, you can't really see because of the lighting too well. I apologize for that. But this is a bone carved depiction it's a bone that has carvings of a king or depictions of a king. And this is how most of their artifacts are, which they really did honor their different kings back then. Now we're getting to the good stuff. Can you tell me what that is? Give it a second. That is jade. Now, jade or precious green stones was a very well sought after thing to bury kings or people of power, offerings to gods. It was known as one of the most rich stones in their lands. In other words, if you were buried with jade, then you were probably pretty popular back then, or had a lot of wealth. Here's some of the jewelry they made. Man, I'm trying to get as good of a view of it as possible here for you. Man, this is just too cool to think they made this stuff 1,000 years ago and how just awesome it looks. Here's a jade necklace. Actually, this necklace has some jade in it as well. And this one. They all have jade in them. This would have been very wealthy through the Yucatan Peninsula 1,000 years ago. I'll tell you what, jade must have been pretty, not easy for them to work with, because I'm sure all this stuff was really hard to make back then. But I don't know if you can see, but look at how intricate these are. So intricate that, I don't know, I have to think that it might have been a lot easier to work with than some of the stones that they were working with.